Hi, I'm Steve Hill from Harley Davidson Diaries, and I'm going to see what it's like as an amateur today to fit the 5-inch face analog speedometer and tachometer. If you've seen it in the dealers, in your HD dealers, it's the one with lots of colours, lots of settings on it, which is very good. But how easy is it to fit into your Harley? Well, I'll be doing it on my Fat Bob, and you can follow me along each step of the way. What you do have to do is get the odometer reading off the current speedo, where you turn it to accessory, for instance, and either, if you've got it set already, that's fine. If not, go through to the mileage reading, make a note of that for the new odometer. The next thing to do is to locate the data link connector. In this case, as is normally the case, it is under here, and when I pull it out, there we are. It's what you'd use for your tuning device as well. And we've got to plug in the new odometer to that. When you open the box, you have your new speedo in it, but also a cable. And this is what we're going to use to put the reading across. Here is the data link. So we take our data link from the bike, pull out the rubber bung, if you can see that, comes out, that's quite tight, and plug the data link for the speedo into that till it clicks. So it's clicked in, and this end is going to go into the speedo. So next we get the speedo. Turn it over, you'll see here is a receptive plug for this one. Plug that in, that locks in. What you've got to do now is obviously turn on the ignition. Make sure the engine on-off switch is in run. Turn the ignition switch, your main switch, to ignition, and you'll see it will come up and it says check. That is now OK. So that has now copied the information across. I can turn the ignition back off. It's as simple as that. Of course, now what you have to do is disconnect the gauge from the bike's data link. Make sure you put the rubber bung back in, install that back inside. So if you're not used to that, that's where it sits. Sort of back in there out of the way. There's one more thing here to do before you continue with the speedo. Why we've got the casing off is here, if you can just about see it, with a big orange master fuse. If we remove that one, there we are, that isolates the bike. That will go back in afterwards. So we'll keep the cover off for the time being. We'll come back to that. The first things you need to do is to get into the speedo housing. So you need to take off the trim from the fuel tank. Of course, being careful all the time when you're doing this job to make sure the fuel tank is protected with the paintwork, and we will be covering that shortly. So we take that screw out. That removes the trim. But the next stage is to undo the screws up by the speedo itself. Start taking this housing off. And we can begin to see the housing inside now of the speedo. If you can see from under here, we've got the 12-point harness. Pull that out. You need to then come around this side to take the reset switch off and unscrew the rubber boot. Just unscrew it. That should push through them to allow this to come out. You can see here now, I've turned it right upside down. You see why you need the towels on here. This cable, according to the instructions, should come out, but it isn't. It's locked in there, but it'll come out in a moment. What we've got to do is now there's 3 tabs that this base plate is clipped into. So using a screwdriver, the service manual tells us to unclip that base plate from the tab. There we are. That one's come off, so that pulls out. We have now got the whole speedo out now and can work on it. I'm leaving it here on the tank so you can see it. Now we should be able to remove the speedo, pushing it out from the housing. We've got the rubber mounting there. That's the old speedo. Now let's go on to fitting the new one. Just so you can see the difference between the 2 speedos, that's the standard Harley Davidson original equipment, and that's the replacement speedo. A lot smarter looking, I'm sure you'll agree, and even better once all the lights are working on it. Right, getting ready to fit the new Speedo. We need that ring that was in there. That fits over the Speedo. I've still got the protective cover on it, on the Speedo, just to protect the face. Leave it on there for now. That fits over the Speedo. It's important, it's a water seal. And then that fits back into the housing. Maybe worth just giving it a clean up while you've got it open on the inside as well, because obviously you don't normally get into those areas. It's worth just giving it a polish. I put the speedometer into position, making sure that it's square where I want it to be in the console. And then we need to put the back plate on, so we've got to flick it over. Got 3 places here. I don't know if you can see them there, there, and just over here, where we've got the tabs where they fit on. So we push the back plate on into the right position. And there we are, that's the Speedo back into the console. We've got the Speedo in, we start plugging everything back into its right position. Finally, that goes into the Speedo itself. So now we've got our Speedo all wired up. Put the fuse back in, everything's powered up again. Now we've got the alarm light flashing, but let's just check we've got the mileage right. Switched on, all the lights seem to be working fine, and the mileage there is correct to what I took off the data feed earlier. Everything's lit up, but of course there's a lot more settings we can make yet. Let's see what we can do with it. Now there's lots of different settings you can have with this gauge. To enter the setup stage, you hold the trip reset, turn it to accessory, and you see it says on. In this case, this is a fuel gauge, but you can click through to the gear setup, the gear indicator, to the brightness, to the color, and you'll see it's changing through the various colors, and you can even change the shades of those. And you can have the needles, you can have the dial at a different color, the LCD at a different color, the Speedo needle at a different color, the tack needle at a different color, and so on. So we see exactly the settings you can have on it. It can be very attractive and far nicer than the standard Speedo. So that is the 5-inch analog replacement Speedo from Harley Davidson. It's not that difficult to put on. I think the biggest problems I had was with the rubber gasket here and the rubber gasket around here. Otherwise everything was fairly straightforward, and it's working very well. I look forward to taking it out on the road.